and we have a very packed agenda, so I'm going to get us started as quickly as possible. The agenda runs past the normal standard we set for a 9 o'clock end time, and we all agreed to that. But I still want to keep us as close to the agenda as possible, so we don't go too past that 9 o'clock traditional end time. So I'm going to open up the meeting now. And the first order of business is to approve the minutes from the December 14th, 2021 board meeting. Happy New Year, everyone. Is there a motion to approve those minutes from December of 2021? Okay, I have a motion from Bill. Is there a second?
Second.
Okay, I have a second. I think I heard Ginny.
Yep.
Okay, any discussion of those minutes? All right, all in favor of approving? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. And Rebecca, are you there? Okay, we'll call that 600. Okay, next item on the agenda is to approve the agenda for tonight's meeting. Do I have a motion to approve tonight's agenda?
So moved.
I have 4 people. Okay, I will go with Ginny, and who's going to second? All right, I've got Warren for a second. Any discussion of tonight's agenda? All right, all in favor, raise your hand, please. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 0, Amy. Okay, we are underway. First up, we have resident remarks. I'm going to ask anyone who's out there who would like to make remarks to the board to please use the Zoom hand raise feature, and I will call on you in the order that Zoom sees you raising your hand. You'll have 3 minutes to make remarks. I have a timer here, and I will give you the 30-second warning if you're hit about that 2.5-minute mark. So is there anyone out there for resident remarks? Okay, I see Marina Blackman. I see Joel Hurwitz. Anyone else? Okay, Ms. Blackman, go ahead and unmute, and you have 3 minutes.
Okay, thank you. Okay, so hi, my name is Marina Blackman, and I am a senior at Oakland Mills High School. And I wanted to take some time today to share a little bit about a project that I've been working on at school through my Intermentor course. So currently I'm working on developing an Adopt a Stream pilot program for Oakland Mills High School. And the overall goal of the project is to encourage local students and residents in the Oakland Mills community to become passionate about their environment. And then it will give them the opportunity to get hands-on water quality testing research, or not research, but experience. And then it will also provide them the opportunity to help out their community at the same time by tackling issues such as erosion and poor water quality with our local streams. So we will be adopting the stream right across from the high school off of Macomber Lane. And then we will be evaluating the data that we collect through water quality testing and then create our own local stream report card. And I already have some solid local sponsorship, and I will be supported by HCC and the Columbia Association Stream Waders, and they will be providing us with resources such as funding and insurance, native plants for the stream banks, and then safety equipment also. So today I wanted to take the time to ask for the support of the Oakland Mills Village Board, including help using the information that we generate for the report card that we're creating, and then also helping with continuity. So I wanted to ask for a partnership with the Oakland Mills High School from the Oakland Mills Village Board. And I wanted to ask the Oakland Mills Village Board to use their influence for getting the word out there about our program and encouraging volunteers, whether it may be through the community newsletter or through Facebook. And overall, I think this project will be very beneficial for our community and will really strengthen it, because it will definitely give us a sense of OM pride, as it's going to be led by OM students with me as the leader, since I'm developing the framework of the project, so the overall structure of it. And it will eventually give us the opportunity to challenge other high schools around the county and their communities to do the same for their local streams. Thank you.
Thank you very much. You did it with 34 seconds to spare. Well, there you go. So you have my support. No, no. Thank you very much. I don't know if anyone on the board has questions, but certainly we're already. Well, everyone moved around on my screen. We're already partners with all the schools as well as several of the school support organizations throughout Oakland Mills. So any kind of community news coming out of Oakland Mills High School, we definitely already put in our newsletter. We do Sandy and Amy put together an education oriented email communication that goes out to residents as well as goes up on social media. So if you could send information to Sandy Cedarbaum, our village manager, we'll make sure to get that information out, and then come on back and let us know what else you might need from us in terms of support.
Okay, thank you.
You're very welcome. I'm glad you're doing this. Thank you very much. This will help our whole community and beyond.
Thank you.
Okay, next up we have Mr. Hurwitz. Go ahead and start. You have 3 minutes.
Good evening, everybody. I'm Joe Hurwitz. I'm a member of the Harper's Choice Board. Speak for myself today. Been attending some of the Hickory Ridge election board meetings and committee meetings to help get some insight on how to improve things in my village. And then last week, Delegate Terrasa's bill appeared, and I appreciate, let me publicly thank her for addressing the issue of money in our elections. And I appreciate that she's taken some of my suggestions the last couple of days. However, as I've shared her, I don't like the approach of this bill. And the Hickory Ridge last night thought it was an onerous burden, might chill people wanting to run for village and CA rep. There are criminal penalties in the law, and there are criminal penalties in multiple other places in the election code, which in and of itself makes it scary because it's very hard to find them all, and it's not clear which ones apply and which ones are even intended to apply. Hickory Ridge's election committee has come up with their own forms and campaign disclosures and rules, and I would much rather have it done that way. And so when you discuss this, I'd like you to focus on the burden to people running and having to deal with a lot of state requirements that are not necessarily clear. And if we could get the same result without having so much other things that you have to comply with, and to expose yourself to criminal penalties. And I see a number of people from a number of the villages in my manager, and so apparently a lot of us are here for the same purpose. So thanks. And I guess, does Ginny have a question?
Thank you, Mr. Hurwitz. Ginny, did you have a question?
Yeah, Mr. Hurwitz, are you saying you think there's a problem in terms of people that either get quite a bit of money running for either the village board or the CA board? Just to give you two examples, and they're, I know it covers all HOAs, or at least HOAs of a certain size, but do you feel if they get money or funding for their campaigns or in-kind, significant in-kind services in a campaign, that the public has a right to know when they're voting on something, whether they've received money from that source? And it's just a matter of disclosure. It's not saying you can't do it. It's more being open and transparent with the public. Do you feel that's a goal we should try to achieve?
I think that was the primary goal. That's Hickory Ridge, and then they had the recusal issue. Part of what I realized with their discussion is that they missed the problem that with the Rouse project that this is intended to fix. Nobody was sure who the money was behind it, and it was unclear how you would recuse yourself from who for what if it ever came up. The people who gave the money, you don't even know what you've been burdened with. So yes, and talking to Delegate Terrasa, I think there's a way of parroting parts of the state law into the HOA law to require that disclosure from any outside groups that might want to influence the elections.
Okay, thank you. Okay, that concludes resident remarks. And actually, we're going to go right into new business. And we're going to, we actually have quite a period of new business. We have 90 minutes of new business scheduled. So I don't mean to be rude, but I will be trying to keep my eye on the clock and, may ask for us to speed things up a bit at times so that we can try to stay on schedule, because we have several guests lined up and that they're all taking time out of their evenings to join us. So our first guest is Delegate Terrasa, and thank you, Delegate Terrasa, for joining us. She's here actually to talk to us about House Bill 93, donation and disbursement reporting by candidates. And let me see. I know you're all not all seeing the same screen I am, but I'm going to move Delegate Terrasa to screen number 1 so that I can feel like I'm in the room with you and looking at you. There you are. Okay. And would you like to open just by giving an overview of the bill, its purpose, and how it would affect entities such as Oakland Mills Village?
Sure. Thanks for having me. I really appreciate it. I should say, just for the Hickory Ridge Village Board, I am more than happy to come talk to you guys as well. My heart is in Oakland Mills just because I went to Oakland Mills High School, for anyone who's still from Oakland Mills High School here, but I'm always happy to talk to any village board. As a former village board member, I know the work that you do is important and that you are very thoughtful in the things that you do. So, okay, so the intent of House Bill 93 is really to have transparency, is to make sure voters know who's financing campaigns. And I think that's important at any level. And I think we realized in the last elections here, but we're learning this across the country, that there's a gap here, right? There's a gap that in village elections, in some HOAs, and I found out in some cities, like there's no statewide law that says cities have to have campaign finance reporting. Now, if a city has requirements, then they have to do reporting. But if they don't, then there's no reporting. So I created a law that applies to, who does it apply to? Candidates for cities or larger common ownership communities. Sorry, I'm just looking at my notes really quickly so I don't miss anything. It applies to municipalities, so cities with 5,000 residents or more, or common ownership communities, which HOAs, villages, condos, co-ops are, with 2,000 lots or more. Because I didn't want to get every little HOA in Columbia. I wanted to have the larger ones that we're talking about. And what it does is it says you'd have to report donations and expenditures just like anybody else running for office. So I know as a village board member that generally speaking, these are pretty small dollar races. I ran at least 2 times. I can't remember if it was 3 times or if it was just 1 appointment and 2 times for village board in Kings Contrivance. I don't remember spending any money. And so that's pretty simple, right? So that's not a big deal. And I didn't want to create a huge burden on folks if that's the case. So it just brings, basically what I wanted to do is create a system where the locals could set up something really simple. And if the locals set up something simple, you follow the local rule. And you follow the local rule for record keeping, and then you send a copy of whatever you filed with the local, meaning like the village board, and you send a copy to the state. And if you don't set up anything locally, if the village doesn't set up anything locally, then you have to follow the perhaps more burdensome state system. So what's the state system in a nutshell? It is a little bit more complicated. It's really probably doesn't make sense if you're just doing $0, $100, $200, even maybe $1,000 or $2,000, but it probably makes more sense if you have $10,000, $20,000, $50,000 coming into a race. In the state system, a candidate does have to form a campaign committee, get someone to agree to be a treasurer, open a bank account, and file annual either affidavits if they bring in less than $1,000 or annual reports if they raise more than $1,000. But the intent wasn't for you to have to follow that. The intent was for you to be able to create a much more simplified system like Joel was talking about. So how might this work for CA and the villages? This is what I would really, basically the local entity can set up something as complicated or simple as you want. And so this is what I would personally recommend, but you can do whatever you want. That's the beauty of the way this is set up. what could you do? You could say, hey, anybody who is raises less than, for example, $2,000 or $500 or whatever threshold you set, all they have to do is fill out one piece of paper with all their donations and one piece of paper with all their expenditures. And if they have over whatever that threshold you pick is, maybe you say $5,000, then they have to follow the state system, because you don't really want to deal with it as a village. If somebody's bringing in that kind of money, you just want them to go deal with the state system. Or you could say everybody follows the same rules and they just have to write it down on a piece of paper, or you create a form, whatever you want to do, that's left up to you. And that's basically it. It's that simple. That it's really that simple. And so I'm happy to answer any questions. I did want to really quickly address, Joel raised the recusal issue. I think some conversation happened at Hickory Ridge that this would create the duty to recuse yourself because you had a report of money from somebody. And I would just say this does not impact your requirement to recuse yourself if you're getting money from somebody. That exists whether or not you have to report that money. That's really whatever your ethics rules are locally. If you're getting money from somebody and you're ruling on and you're making a decision about something that affects their property rights or what have you, you guys have to decide how to handle that, whether or not they report it. This is just about the transparency of the community and letting other folks know what money is coming in. So I hope everybody would want to support this. It's really just about letting everybody know what money is coming in. It doesn't restrict the amount of money. It doesn't do any of those things. It's just transparency. So I hope that helped. I don't want to talk for too long. I'm happy to answer questions.
Thank you. I probably have a question or two, but I always hold myself till the end to make sure all of my colleagues have adequate time to ask questions. So members of the board, do you have any questions for Delegate Terrasa? Just give me a hand raise or a wave hello or something like that. Is that a question from Sandy or are you getting my attention? Okay, Sandy.
I have a question. Thanks, Jen, for being here.
Sure.
How soon are these reports published so that the community then can see them real time before an election or while they're voting? Because I guess that's the purpose of it. So what happens once we send it to the state?
So the village can publish it themselves. I mean, you guys can post them anytime you want. That is a good question. I don't know how long it takes the state to put them up once they receive them. Right now, for cities, this already exists for cities that have their own requirements today. They have the candidate. I should have explained this. The candidate who files with you also has to send a copy to the state. So it's not on the village manager. The village manager doesn't have to send a copy of all these to the state. The candidate has to file with you and then just send a copy of whatever they filed with you to the state. I don't know how long it takes them to get it up. I can try to find that out, but they are doing that for cities that have this requirement.
So you're saying the village doesn't have to send it to the state, the candidate does?
The candidate does, right?
Okay, and the village can post it on their websites?
Yeah, you can post yes, absolutely. And my hope would be that you want to have that kind of transparency, especially one of the reasons, like you might ask, why didn't I just set up a really simplified system at the state level instead of leaving it on every village and every community association to set up a system themselves? And because it's a really simple, I'm really envisioning a very simple system, just a list of, and you can make it complex. You could say, I want to know a lot more, but I'm envisioning a very simplified system. And I originally set aside to actually set up those systems on the state level, but it turns out that's actually pretty complicated to do for every community association. Those elections happen at all different times of year. There's all different processes. There's all different, it's very complicated to do that statewide for everybody. And so that's why we left it to the locals and figured so one option was to just make everybody do the state thing. I thought that was that was probably too burdensome for very small elections or for people just bringing in $200, $500. And so this was sort of the happy medium of you guys set up a system as uncomplicated as it might be. You can all share it with all the other villages and maybe you create a form or piece of paper.
Thank you. Bill? Oh, I'm sorry, I didn't see Rebecca. Rebecca and then Bill.
Just a question have you looked, is there precedence for this elsewhere?
Is there precedence for this elsewhere? You mean other states?
Yeah.
I don't know about the community associations. We're actually researching that now. They're hopefully going to get back to us by Friday. We have our researchers doing that, but I don't know if there are community associations done that way, but the cities are done elsewhere. So my hope is that we don't want to have city elections occurring where we don't know where the money is coming from.
Okay, Bill?
Yes, Jen, thanks so much for taking the interest in this. I think it's very important. Thanks for setting a minimum floor of residences to have the HOA qualify under their law. And then thanks for making the decision-making local. Really appreciate it. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Okay, any other questions? Ginny?
Actually, Sandy raised a very, very good question there, I think. I'm not sure how you deal with it, Jen. The concern is time frame. If they file and they file with the state, you're talking about the election will be over. The village board elections, CA elections, people file in what, February, March, and the election's over the last couple of days in April. So if somebody's getting significant campaign finance money or in-kind services, which can be very a lot of money spent on in-kind services, you're not going to know. The voter is not going to know in time to make a decision whether that should be weighed in favor of or against a candidate. So I don't know how do you deal with that unless what you're saying is the locals can do their own rules. So they could require that there be weekly filings that would go to the board, local board, and then they could be published right away. Because when signs come out and slates are developed and all of that, there's an assumption that somebody's paying for that unless, I mean, in some way. So, you know.
So I actually had that conversation with Jared Demarinis at the Board of Elections. And that was part of why we didn't set up the system ourselves, because at the state level, you file annual reports every other year every year except for an election year. In an election year, you file your annual report, but there's four different reports in addition to that. There's like a pre-primary, a post-primary, I could have this wrong. So if somebody's telling me I have this slightly wrong, but it's something like a pre-primary, a post-primary, a pre-general, and a post-general, something like that. I may have it slightly off. So you guys might be able to get some guidance from the state. I'm certainly happy to work with you on some way on figuring out, like, you might want to get a report, at the end of February, the end of March, and then have a couple of reports up till the day before. But yeah, I mean, it is going to be difficult to get the state to turn that stuff around that quickly. And that is why I highly recommend, in the interest of transparency, that you set up your own system and you do post them on your website.
Yeah.
But you're right. I mean, it is a challenge to get the state system to move as quickly as our village elections would move.
Yeah, thank you. It won't
Thank you.
happen. So I think the village would really have to say this is an issue that we care about, and the openness, transparency, and allowing the voters to have all the information that they need. That's the only way it would work. Okay, good. Thank you for bringing this up.
Sandy?
And what
You have
is the
another
time frame of, if it got enacted, when would it be become law?
So that's another good question. I think it's October 1st, but I wish Joel is still here. I think he knows, because he was telling me this earlier today.
I think it is October 1st.
I think it's October 1st. I could look back at Joel's message to me earlier today, but I believe it's October 1st because he was telling me about somebody who has, I'm looking at his message. He said the effective date. I'm not sure. I can find that out, but it definitely would not be in effect for the next village elections.
Okay, thank you.
It would be, you'd have to wait till 2024.
But
We
Okay,
needed you to
Sa-
put this
Sandy,
bill in
if you're
last
still,
year.
Sandy, if you're still talking, you muted yourself.
I'm done.
Oh, okay.
We needed you to put this bill in last session. So it would.
All right, I have a, I think I have a question, and now my second thing I think is a more of a comment than a question. So my question is, and this is probably related to Rebecca's, so your answer might be the same, but I can certainly see where you would want cities or any kind of government entity, you know, to fall under what's required of other section 503. So has your legal team looked into whether this can stand up, given that we're technically private boards, even though we meet in open meeting and conduct public business?
Yes, I don't have the opinion in front of me, but I did get an AG's opinion before I put this forward.
Okay, very
with
good.
that very concern in mind.
Okay, and just one comment, and I am not speaking for OMCA at this point. This is a personal thing, because I've looked at what's going on in some other places. And one of the things that has caused me concern is, of course, anyone with a conflict of interest should recuse themselves. But in my experience, we probably deal with about 100 things, where there is no conflict of interest for every time that there might be. So it's been fairly rare around here. But another effort I'm seeing is, basically to eliminate people from even eligibility to serve on a village board, or to serve in other capacities because of their profession or who's donating, things like that. I realize your bill would not state that. Yeah, you made that very clear. But if the state is getting involved in the elections, would the state also provide protections so that these associations aren't prohibiting people from participating?
I personally would oppose prohibiting people from participating, but this is the first I'm hearing that as an issue to, right. So when I look down, it's because I'm writing this down.
Okay.
But prohibiting participating based on profession or who's donated, or
profession, or who's donating. So what I wouldn't want to see, since we're and again, this kind of relates to my question of, well, we're not really government, but we would fall under the same rules as if you're running for a government elected position. Is I would want to see this information be available, so the public is very well aware of who they're voting for, and maybe who's supporting who they're voting for. I wouldn't want to see it used so that organizations can amend bylaws or election policy to say, if you took money from so-and-so, or if this is your profession and you're self-funding, you can't even be part of our board.
Yeah, they can't, okay, I gotcha. I don't believe this touches that, and I would be surprised if you can prohibit membership that way. Like, we don't do that on the state level. Nobody's prohibited from running for delegate, or that I can think of, unless somebody's going, Joel might have somebody I'm not thinking of, but from running for delegate or senate. But I hear what you're saying. You don't want this law to open the, like, by sending it back to the locals, allow them to also prohibit certain people from running. Is that what you're saying?
Right. Basically, I wouldn't.
Yeah, I wouldn't want that
the-
either.
I wouldn't want the transparency afforded by this law to lead to any kind of discrimination, basically.
Okay,
I
would hope not as
I
well.
think the voters should know who they're voting for, and that's it. Then they make their decision. That's all. Because
Right.
I have heard, I mean, no one has tried to do this yet, but I have heard some discussion, especially after the past couple of years, of, oh, maybe there are people from certain professions who just shouldn't be allowed to be on certain boards.
Well, that would concern me anyway, and I would want to work with you if that became a trend, not just for HOAs and villages, but generally speaking, that
Mhm.
becomes problematic. But I mean, we're sort of talking high level, so maybe there are circumstances where that doesn't. I mean, I can't really think of, like, I know, for example, somebody who's a teacher can't run for Board of Ed or can't be on the Board of Ed. I'm not sure I know the whole background of that, but so I'm not sure I want to comment on that at such a high level. But I certainly wouldn't want anybody to be discriminated against.
Okay. Yeah, and I'm trying to keep it a little bit high level because
Yeah.
this is not coming from Oakland Mills, and I don't want to,
Okay. I mean, I'm happy to talk
interfere
to
in
somebody
other
about
affairs, but
specifics.
I can talk to you a little bit
Yeah.
offline.
Okay,
But
that's
no,
fine.
what you said reassures me. I mean, that
Okay.
was, yeah, that reassures me.
Okay, and I'm happy to answer any other questions, but if I could just interrupt with one thing, I really wanted to thank Oakland Mills Village Board for coming to me first and asking the questions and having me come answer. I really appreciate that opportunity. I mean, sometimes people make assumptions about legislation and are happy about it or not happy about it, but giving me this opportunity is something I really appreciate. And nothing I wouldn't expect from Oakland Mills, but something I really appreciate about Oakland Mills. But at any rate, I didn't mean to cut off any questions if there are more.
All right. Were there any other questions? Okay. Well, thank you so much for joining us, and especially thank you for offering to join us on such short notice. We really appreciate it.
Anytime. You just let me know.
Okay.
my
Thank
heart,
you.
know my heart's in Oakland Mills.
Yes.
Don't tell my own village board that.
Thanks, Jen.
All right, take care.
Bye.
I'm gonna sign off now, if that's all right.
All right. Thank you very
Okay.
much.
Bye. John McCoy, I made you a co-host. If you want to share anything when we get to you.
Yes, I do have a PowerPoint.
Okay.
Thank you.
Okay, before we go to John, were there any additional comments from the board on the proposed House Bill 93? Okay, very good. I think it was good information and good questions, so thank you, everyone. All right, now I am pleased to welcome from the Columbia Association, the Watershed Manager John McCoy. He's here to talk to us about a couple of things. So he actually has a full 60 minutes. Feel free not to talk for 60 minutes, John, if you don't want to talk for 60 minutes, but we allotted 60. The couple of things that he's going to talk about are, or actually, yeah, I'm sorry. Yeah, the things he's going to talk to us about are the stream restoration project, which is actually not in Oakland Mills proper, but it's adjacent to Oakland Mills, and obviously all the waterways are connected, so it's of concern to Oakland Mills. The Stevens Forest Pond outfall issues, if you're familiar with the pond, I don't know, John, if you have maps or anything, but I believe this is the pond that sort of sits between the school and the pool and kind of down that slope. And then the fiscal 21 cash reserve watershed proposed project in OM. This comes from a special I guess budget consideration that the CA board passed last year, stating that any villages that were over the 20% reserve cap and turn that money back to CA would see it reinvested in the village as part of an environmental project. So John, take it away. As Sandy said, your co-host, you can share screens or do whatever you'd like to inform us, and thank you.
Well, thank you. Thank you for inviting me. It's actually been several years since I've seen some of you, so it's a pleasure to be back. I do have a PowerPoint. I have put all three topics in it, and I think to try to be helpful on questions, as I get to the end of each topic, I think perhaps I'll stop and we can have a conversation about that rather than going all the way to the end and then trying to, at least for me, it would be difficult to remember the first topic. But you guys are younger. So if I can, I'm going to share a screen. And I believe that's up. And we still have audio and visual. Yeah, okay. So
We're good, John.
first topic, I would like to talk about the stream restoration, give you an overview of the Lake Elkhorn Stream Restoration Project. So as you know, one of CA's long-term goals is to maintain our lakes and ponds as amenities for our residents and guests. Our lakes and ponds serve as both stormwater management facilities and amenities. The volume of sediment and the quantity of nutrients reaching our lakes and ponds creates water quality and sedimentation problems in our water bodies. Dredging and harvesting aquatic plant growth are routine features of our maintenance activities. A significant source of sediment being deposited in our lakes and ponds is from stream bank erosion. And Columbia's Watershed Management Plan was developed to address those issues. So since 2011, CA has been following this plan. We've been building stormwater BMPs through the capital budget. And in the Lake Elkhorn subwatershed, we built 10 bioretention facilities. We've done 4 stream restoration projects. We built 2 wetland benches in 2 of the stormwater ponds in Long Reach in particular. We've done 4 stream bank stabilization projects to protect CA pathways and bridges. And these are projects that are always under 200 feet. We use large rock imbricated walls, and we use them as a last resort. We generally like either to move the pathway, or on occasion we're able to get the county to come in and do work because there will be a sewer line involved. And I would say that Columbia residents through our rain garden program have installed 86 rain gardens in Long Reach and Owen Brown as part of our effort to deal with stormwater. But residents continue to have issues with stream banks eroding onto their property in proximity to their homes. Our lakes and ponds continue to have sedimentation problems and experience overabundant aquatic plant growth and algae blooms. And quite frankly, our residents don't like our lakes filling in, and they don't like the appearance of our lakes when they're real heavy with plant growth. I think our conversations with folks over around Wild Lake this past summer are pretty good evidence of that. So I guess about 3 years ago, we put out an RFP and did a solicitation. We asked a number of different organizations if they would come help us with a larger project to help address sedimentation in Lake Elkhorn and in Jackson Pond. And we selected Wetland Studies and WSSI, Wetland Studies and Solutions Incorporated, sorry, as our contractor. And they came back with a proposal to put together the Lake Elkhorn Stream Restoration Mitigation Bank. And what this project is a large privately funded stream restoration project that, from CA's perspective, is designed to reduce the volume of sediment being deposited in Jackson Pond and Lake Elkhorn. And this is a big project. It'll ultimately stretch from the head of Lake Elkhorn all the way up to High Tour Hill. So what's a bank? What's a mitigation bank? If I am a private or a public entity who is doing some sort of work and I impact a stream, I am required to mitigate that impact. And there are a number of different options that the regulatory agencies allow. One, you can mitigate on site. So let's say I'm building a development and I impact a stream, I can do a small stream restoration on site as part of my mitigation. Or I can go out and attempt to purchase credits somewhere in a bank within the watershed. And what a bank is it's a partnership between a landowner and a company that specializes in environmental finance, in stream restoration, and managing this sort of thing, where the company invests in doing a stream restoration, creating a product that the regulatory agencies agree meets their criteria and generates these credits for having done that, which they can then sell to another entity which has caused an impact and needs to mitigate. So that's what Wetland Studies and the Columbia Association are proposing. And in the purchasing of the credits, there is a cash exchange, and the majority of that funding goes back to the investors in the company that built the project, and a small portion of it goes to a trust fund of sorts that guarantees the funding for maintenance of the bank over the long term. And the long term really would be in perpetuity, I guess. So I want to walk you through sections of the proposed restoration project. And I believe you can see my cursor. So this is Jackson Pond here. The upper section runs from the head of Jackson Pond all the way up to High Tour Hill. And this is a picture of bank erosion behind Watercrest Place. You can see the residence home there. You can see an undercut tree. The second section is below Jackson Pond, all the way down to Rouse Parkway or Route 175. And the picture is cut banks on an outside meander of that stream below Tamar Drive. And those banks are 7 to 8 feet tall. Next section would be below Rouse Parkway, and this would run from the parkway down to the BG&E power line right of ways. And the photograph is again of an outside meander bend. Banks are about 7 feet tall. There is a pathway right at the top of the bank there, which actually now is somewhat undercut. Safety fences up there because we have people using the pathway and it's a bit of a safety issue. This lower section runs from below Sewell's Orchard down to Oakland Mills Park, Oakland Mills Road. And again, the picture being a cut outside meander below McGraw Court. And again, another undercut tree. And then the last area extends down below Oakland Mills Road to the headwaters, or actually to the forebay above Lake Elkhorn. There is a segment that goes up to Homespun Pond right at the, stops right below the pond there. And another segment that runs up along that tributary that ends up by St. Mark's, Old Brick, the Episcopal Church up there on Oakland Mills Road. So the current status of this project, CA has granted easements to Wetland Studies and Solutions. Wetland Studies has applied for a permit to establish a stream restoration mitigation bank. There is no design, or there are no design or construction drawings. There are no construction permits that have been applied for. The Army Corps of Engineers and Maryland Department of the Environment closed the public comment period on that permit last Friday, the 7th. And the Corps and MDE will review that application and the comments on that application. And be honest with you, I've never been involved in this kind of permit application, but I assume it'll be late winter or early spring before they respond to it. And with that, I should take questions on the stream restoration project.
Do we have any questions from the board? Go ahead and use the hand raise feature or wave at me. Lynn?
Yeah, John, thank you very much for this presentation. I just want to be clear about the bank. So does that mean that, for example, a developer planning a new development would be relieved of the responsibility to work with runoff, et cetera, as long as they put money into the bank that could then be used elsewhere, somewhere else in the entire watershed? So that would mean not just in Columbia, but the whole, what would be considered the watershed that this would be applicable to is what I'm asking.
I believe the Little and Middle Patuxent.
Okay. Phew. Big area. Okay, thank you.
Sorry, I couldn't unmute. Thank you, Lynn. Anyone else? Okay, no questions? Oh, Rebecca, is that, I'm sorry, you're in the shadows a little bit there. Are you? Is that your
Am I?
hand?
Oh,
Okay, there you go.
yeah.
When the screen share is on, you're so small that
Sorry, I'll use the reaction raise hand next time. John, I know that each area is going to require different solutions, but can you give us some ideas of what a stream restoration looks like or what form it might take? It's not all those giant boulders you were talking about.
No, the imbricated walls are really used, at least the walls are specific to certain types of activities. And we use them when we're dealing with short stretches because the waterway construction will give you a general permit if you're building one that's less than 200 feet to address a specific erosion issue. In something like this, I think what Wetland Studies has talked about is using some natural stream design, which does use larger rock. It does use root wads. In the upper reaches, I don't know whether a regenerative stormwater conveyance, which is more of a step pool type system that does use larger rock in creating the steps. We've built several of those. I don't know whether that would be appropriate. I do know that comments from U.S. Fish and that was DNR. Those are DNR, Maryland Department of Natural Resources comments about more of a natural fish conveyance, which is a somewhat less structured rock-lined stabilization feature, but they would be much smaller rocks, not the large boulder. But I got to be honest with you, it's not been designed. I'm not a design engineer. The way we've got this set up, if it moves forward, what Wetland Studies would do, they go into, and it's going to be divided up in sections. They go into their first section. They would do a current conditions assessment. They would come up with a concept plan, and we would then bring that out to residents, ask them for input, take that input back, use that input as they went to 30% design, go back out to residents, ask them for input, take that input back, go back to more like a 90% design, go back out one more time before they actually landed on a final design.
So this is going to take forever, is really what you're saying.
Well, I think forever's a little long, but I'm thinking we're looking at probably, if this goes to fruition and they build the whole thing, this could be an 8-year process. Yeah.
That's a lot faster than I thought.
Well, yeah, it's shorter than forever. I agree with that.
All right, thanks, Rebecca. Other questions for John? Jennifer?
Hi, John. Thank you for the presentation. Do they know how long, like once this is finished, how long these effects would last for? Like, how long would we have the stream restored for, essentially? Because, I'm sure climate change is going to get potentially worse. So do they have like an idea of how long this would, I'm searching for the right word, but I can't think of it, but how long it would ideally keep the streams restored before they may have to do it again?
So what I have read in the documentation that the regulatory agencies put out and the support material they have, their assumption is once a section or the bank has been built, there is a 10-year monitoring and maintenance period after that, where Wetland Studies and Solutions Incorporated would be responsible for maintenance of it. And I believe at the end of that 10 years, the regulatory agencies make a judgment as to whether a mature and stable system has been created. And at that point, the system gets turned over to a long-term steward that would be CA. And the assumption is that it is a mature and it's a stable system, and it's going to be stable. Now, there are influences, natural influences in particular, rainfall increases, the amount we get, the intensity, that's going to have an effect on things. But I think in our situation, this is a built environment. There's just not a whole lot more development or redevelopment that's going to occur. And redevelopment that does occur has significantly more stormwater requirements imposed on it than the original development of Columbia had. So I think they believe that the life expectancy is a long-term thing. I think that's what you were kind of looking for.
Thank you.
Okay, other questions from the board? Going once, going twice. All right, John, thank you for information on this project. Actually, you have the floor for a while, so you want to go into the Stevens Forest Pond now? Well, not go into the pond, but tell us about the pond. It's a little cold out there.
It's cold. Plus there's ice on it, so it wouldn't be much fun. So Stevens Forest Pond, and well, I guess I better locate it for you. Right off Stevens Forest Road, behind Stevens Forest Pool and adjacent to Stevens Forest Elementary School, there is a pond. And I kind of wanted to give you a little history on it. It is not an old farm pond. You know, Howard County has this really great system, the interactive map, and you can go in there and pick up satellite or aerial photography, satellite imagery, all the way back to the mid 50s, I think. So this is a 1970 image. This lot right here in the middle is where the pond is. This lot is the school. This lot is where the pool got developed. And as you can see in 1970, nothing's there, but you can see the disturbance as Columbia is beginning to be built. You can see the roads going in. The orange outlines are in fact property lines here. So that's 1970. This is 75. Everything's built now. The school's there. There's our pool, and there's our pond. All the development. What's kind of interesting? It's open around the pond. Okay. There's no forest there. The forest is elsewhere. So here we are in 2020. We're 45 years later. The forest is filled in around the pond. And has matured in other places. So what that pond does right at the moment is it receives runoff from the school. A good bit of the campus and the roof. The picture on the left is in fact the pipe that comes from the school with its little concrete apron, discharges down into the pond. Picture to the right is the outfall. It's the inlet to the outfall for that pond. So what we really have draining water from that pond is an 8-inch pipe with a little metal screen on it. This is an old facility. It hasn't been worked on in decades. It's not got the great big concrete risers that are kind of the standard for today. Picture on the left is the outlet. This is the pipe down at the bottom of the berm. That is a 10-foot berm on that facility, and drainage water from the pond, normal drainage water, discharges out through this pipe. During larger events, this area right here is the emergency spillway. And this is supposed to be dry. This is not supposed to be wet as it shows in this picture. And what got our attention beyond the emergency spillway being wet was we were getting some resident complaints about water on the pathway during larger events when the pond was full. So this picture of the wet spillway was back in 2019. So we have hired a firm to go out and run a camera up through the pipe. I guess a really bad analogy is a colonoscopy, huh? So, sorry, my bad. So this first picture on the left is the first joint in the pipe. It's a PVC pipe. That's about 7 feet up in the pipe. Nice joint moving into another section of pipe. On the right is the uppermost joint. That's 26 feet in. And you can see there actually isn't any sort of coupling there or anything. That's just a pipe that's jammed butt up against another pipe. This is a void down below it, which is not a good thing. Water actually can get down in there and then seep underneath the outfall pipe. And the pipe, the type of pipe changes. This is the white is a PVC pipe. This orange corroded thing is an old metal pipe. And here we are. We're actually almost 50 feet up in the pipe. You can see this is the orange pipe. And bingo, those things are rocks. They are the nice sharp-edged granite quarried rock. And 50 feet is pretty much right below the inlet. I measured the distance from the outlet pipe at the base of the berm to the inlet pipe, and it runs just a little over 50 feet. So what we're figuring is when we had some ice, the grill on the top of the inlet pipe was removed and rocks were dropped in there. And how many, we're not sure because we can't get a scope past this point. But we do know that we don't believe we're going to be able to get them out. Not by, snaking something in there and grabbing them. We don't believe that the iron pipe will withstand any great vibration. We were thinking maybe we'd try to run a water hose in there and blow them out. And we don't believe that'll work. So last slide that I'd like to show you related to Stevens Forest. This is the regulation under which that pond is regulated currently. It's code 378. It's a conservation practice standard that's managed by USDA, and it's for ponds. And it sets requirements for a pond berm, how they're to be maintained, how they're to be constructed. One of the big issues that we have with this pond is the berm. In a pond that was built to actually, serve as a pond, not as a sediment trap, would have an impervious core so that water can't seep through it. And this pond doesn't. So it doesn't meet 378 in a number of different ways. Back in 2016, we had an engineer look at this pond and talk to us about, a standard renovation where we would dewater the pond, we would open the berm, redo the outfall structure, put one of those concrete boxes in, and then line the berm with clay to prevent water from moving through it. Their estimate back then was, $360,000, $370,000. Our guess at this point is, $450,000. Here we are about 6 years down the road. So what we have done with this is we have asked an engineering firm to look at the pond and to give us some options. We fully appreciate the amenity, the water body. We've told the engineer the water body is important. We're going to need to keep that, but we would like some options on perhaps not having to rebuild the berm and the outfall. So what I wanted to do was kind of start a conversation with you guys. We haven't talked to residents. You're the first folks we've really talked to about this, that we need to do something there. And when we get some options back from the engineer, and we've kind of talked about them, I believe what we'd want to do is come back in and, having kind of set the table with this conversation, then have a discussion about what kind of options we got on this.
So John, I'm glad to hear you're acknowledging that the water body itself is important, because I know, I've heard from a lot of people that pond is important, not just the people who live around it, but obviously there's a school there and a very popular pool and playground, and a lot of people enjoy the pond. I guess one of the questions I have, and maybe this is all hindsight now, or maybe this goes, plays into what the future of that is. When Stevens Forest Elementary was expanded, which obviously expanded the roof area that now has to drain, the school system built a dry pond retention area just to the north of the new addition. They built one in the front of the school near the entryway where you come in. And they also, I believe, built a small one on that little island between the parking lot and the carpool and bus loop.
Yeah.
Should I guess what I'm asking is, should the school system have done more, or should the school system be a party of this so that their runoff on that southeast corner of their property is not, you know, basically flowing exclusively into the CA pond?
Well, I can't address the should portion of that. What I can tell you is that we have reached out to both the county and the school system and asked them if they would like to help us with this. And the school system did not reply. And the county government, stormwater management division, declined. Politely.
You know, okay, well, if you contact the school system and you say Oakland Mills or Stevens Forest, they won't reply. You need to put another community's name in and then they'll reply. That's a joke.
That's not what I found. Unfortunately, that's not what I found. It's kind of across the board.
I'm kidding. Jenny, did you have a question?
Yeah, thanks, John. John, is there any chance that there's runoff coming from the parking lot in front of the pool and the neighborhood center? Because it is causing problems with homes in that area.
I don't believe it does. We looked at the storm drain system pretty well. You know, the county has reasonably good mapping in that area. We looked at that and it all seems to go around the other way and discharge down on the lower side of the pool where, yeah, there are some issues.
So the issues are really from, okay, not impacting the pond, but they certainly still are impacting homes. Okay, thank you.
Bill?
Yes, John, on this, would it be possible when engineer looks at options is to look at it in a little larger context of not just stormwater management, but the amenity to the community in terms of it's a nice place to sit down, look at the ponds, nature, maybe have a lunch. You're sitting at the pool and you got out of the pool, you drying off and you sit facing the pond, so that it's more than just stormwater management, but enhancing the asset to the community. And I know HOCO by design, which has been put on hold for a while, many of the comments about HOCO by design concerning open space was to enhance its ability to do more things for the community. And I know people really enjoy that pond, looking at it. I know kids play by it, et cetera. So that when you talk with the engineer about options, would you be able to look at it as not just stormwater management, but as a community asset that people might want to sit, look at the pond, enjoy that? So that's just an idea. Thank you.
Well, I would say that right at the moment, we have told the engineer it's an amenity and it is one of CA's assets. But what their primary focus is safety, integrity of the berm. I agree with you that it's a well-used and well-appreciated pond. But the last thing that we want is to have a collapse or something of that nature. So I really think since it's in an open space and we acknowledge it's an amenity, that an engineer, particularly a civil engineer, structural engineer, might not be the kind of guy we'd want thinking about enhancements. And I think maybe what we do is once we have some options in mind that work for the safety and we have this second discussion that we'll have, maybe that's when we can talk about what might work for enhancing the amenity for residents. I'm not sure we want to put a civil engineer on that.
Yeah, I understand that. Yes, absolutely. And for the engineering point of view, they'll do it so it's functional first, that it's safe, that it meets the watershed management criteria, it stays safe, it's long lasting, low maintenance, et cetera. And yes, after it's met the top priority, if when you bring back options, that once those structural issues are squared away, we could look at potentially enhancing the amenity. That would be great. I appreciate it. Thank you.
Thank you, Bill. Other questions for John? Okay, well, we appreciate you coming in and talking to us first. Obviously, there's a lot to be
Johnny's
done.
not done. He has
No,
one
I'm
more.
I'm just talking about the pond right now.
Oh, okay.
Let me finish. Obviously, there's a lot to be done in terms of communicating with the community as well as planning this, and we'd appreciate updates along the way as well as input, because as I said and as you've acknowledged, it is an important amenity, not just to CA but to the residents and folks in the neighborhood who frequent the pool, the playground, the school, that whole area. So thank you. All right, and now your last item is the environmental project using the Return Village funds from Oakland Mills.
Yes, so my thought on that had been that there's about $28,000 there. And I think we have an opportunity to do some good work that will supplement some work we've already done over off Long Look Lane. I'll bet it was 5 years ago, maybe a little less. We had some capital money, and down at the cul-de-sac at the end of Long Look, where the street drain comes off into open space, we built a bioretention facility down there. And there is a second street drain that comes off Long Look right here. It's between 9545 and 9541. That street drain comes under the property and discharges right at the property line. And recently, our capital improvements removed the bridge that crossed over the gully that had created and put a culvert in. So there's a pipe there now. They redid that pathway, really, that comes off of Caboose Court. That's a new pathway all the way down over that culvert. And I've got some pictures here. So this is 9545 here. That outfall comes out right here, pretty much at the property line. And this is the gully that have been developed. This new rock down here is the rock that's above where that culvert goes under the pathway, put that into stabilize things. Picture on the right is a more high level shot of it. This is the outlet here. It comes out on a concrete apron. This is a right large sycamore tree right there. This is your new pathway here on the left-hand side. And I'm actually not sure what was here prior. I'm assuming they used it as a bit of a stockpile area when they were doing this work here, and they've stabilized it. It's going to regrow in grass. But what my thought had been was there's an opportunity here to take that street runoff and run it into a facility similar to this one on the right hand. And this is the tiered bioretention facility we built down at the end of Long Look Lane. This is the manhole that goes into the outlet, and this has several bioretention beds that go down there before it discharges into the stream. And we could do something similar to that. Exactly where, I'm not sure. My thought would be that there's enough drop on this line that we got a lot of velocity coming down there. We can move water a little bit. Water doesn't like to flow uphill too much, but we might be able to get it up into this area and do something similar. I would like to avoid having to deal with that large sycamore tree. If I had my druthers, we would be able to figure out how there that would leave that. So that I would present to you as my thoughts on what might be a good way of spending that money. I don't think the 28 will do the complete job. So we would have to figure out how to find some capital money at CA. But I believe it would do more than 3/4 of it.
Okay,
Interested in
questions,
your thoughts on that?
questions from the board? Bill?
Yes, John, could you show us on a few slides earlier, the map of the area, and show us on that map where that proposed outfall with concrete apron would be, please?
Well, the outfall with concrete apron exists. So
Okay,
that's what those pictures were of. That's right there where my cursor is, right at the corner, 9545, 9541, and open space. It is right there in that corner. And you can, perhaps maybe you can't see, and I thought it would work. This is a concrete head wall. That black spot is the pipe that comes down from the street. And there's a concrete apron 8 to 10 feet long below that. So that already exists. What I'm suggesting is that we might be able to build a facility like this one on the right-hand side. Exactly where in this area, I'm not quite sure, but there is a large area just to the right of that outlet where it might work. And I can-
okay,
I'll go back to
in
the
that,
map.
okay, could you go forward 1 or 2 slides to the area that they used for staging?
Yeah, this area
Hold that
here.
one. Yes, you've got your arrow in that area.
Yes,
Where is that area on the slide, a couple slides earlier, so I can get the big overview? Yes,
it's
that.
right here. That would be right in here.
Okay, and those topography lines, is that a 10-foot drop between each of those yellow lines?
Oh, no. Oh my goodness, that would be steep. No, that's a 2-foot drop.
2-foot drop,
Yeah, that's a
okay.
2-foot drop. Yeah,
Okay.
boy, if that was a 10-foot drop, that'd be a 100-foot drop in there. We'd be living on cliffs.
Okay, so 2-foot drop. Now, my question is right, what it looks like in that area with the 2-foot drops, et cetera, that is it's got some drop to it, but it looks like most of that is currently mowed. Is that a correct assumption?
Yeah, probably. I would say
Okay.
that. Yeah,
And I was going to say, my thought would be if it's currently mowed, it's a relatively flat, and I'll put that in quotation marks, relatively flat area where kids might play today. Okay. And I would be adverse to losing recreation area if there were some other area that could be used for the water retention, so that we get water retention and water management without sacrificing a recreation area for those kids in about 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 or 7 homes there where people can look out their back window and see their kids playing. So that would be my concern.
well, I will tell you that we would have to balance that with moving into a partially wooded area and removing trees, and people's concerns about doing that, which people, there are a lot of residents who are very concerned about that right now. So
Well, I'm very concerned about the recreation too. And
understood.
that's one of my concerns with CA is that there isn't enough recreation focus. Where are kids going to play? Depending on what study you look at, 30, 40, 50% of kids in grade school are obese, and they're on screen time too much as it is already. And if we take away easy recreation area opportunity for them, we're only contributing to that issue. And so for me, yes, people don't want to see trees come down. I agree. But I also don't want to see mowed lawn where kids can play come down. To me, they're equal. Okay. And CA, the open space in Oakland Mills, if you look back at the photographs over the decades, has lost a lot of mowed area where kids can play. So that's my real concern with that, is I really don't want to see more recreation area lost.
Well,
Thank you.
I am open to trying to figure out how to balance the various concerns, because I don't disagree with you. I just, you know, our goal is to improve water quality, try to protect our streams, our ponds, and our lakes. And we would like to try to treat stormwater runoff and do so as we try to balance everyone's concerns.
Okay.
Great.
Thanks,
Thank you.
John. Thanks, Bill. Rebecca, and then Sandy. And Lynn, are you applauding or raising your hand?
I'm applauding.
Okay. All right. I couldn't. All
Balance
right.
the mowed area with the wooded area. Yeah.
All
we
right.
need to-
Rebecca, and then Sandy.
Well, just a quick comment on that. Bill, my kids play in the woods for 75% of the time. They don't need a mowed grass area. They get much more exercise climbing and moving branches in the woods. So you don't have to have a big lawn to get exercise for kids to play. But my real comment is, John, can you help me understand the point of this project? Is it to avoid all that stream restoration projects that we talked about in the beginning? Would this be kind of preventative so that we don't have those issues over here? Or because I guess I'm in Thunderhill, and you know, our streams are eroding into everyone's backyards too, like crazy. So it's hard to think about prioritizing an issue over here where the streams are all lovely versus fixing where there's a problem already in Thunderhill, if that makes sense.
Well, what my general approach on this is that we have to do both. We need to treat stormwater as close to the source as we can, but keeping in mind space, how much space is available to treat it, who might, or who, I guess we get back to that should question, you know, who should be responsible for treating street runoff. I feel like it's a good investment in the environment and in open space and in our residents, both health and enjoyment of the open space, if we do both stormwater management where we can, where it's reasonable, and we do stream restoration where we can and where it's reasonable. I don't think that either one alone is actually going to solve the problem. You know, it's a big problem. If you look at the concentration of stormwater facilities in the newer villages, River Hill, Kendall Ridge over in Longreach, versus the concentration of stormwater facilities in the older villages, Wild Lake, Harper's Choice, Oakland Mills, there really isn't much stormwater treatment in the older villages. So anywhere we can get it in, we probably ought to be thinking about it. The issue with the streams is there are just some places we can't get it in enough room. We can't make other people do work.
Sandy, and then Ginny. Sandy, you're muted.
I'm trying. What is the alternative if this wasn't done? What would happen there? It would just not be, it would-
Well, so if we didn't do this, what ultimately probably happened is we'll have continued problems with the gully that it cuts. We put a culvert in there. I know our capital improvement program is rather interested in some sort of remediation between the culvert and that pipe. And you know, if that the pipe under the path clogs, we'll have a significant drainage issue.
okay, thank you.
Okay, Ginny?
Yeah, on Sandy's question, Sandy, sorry, you keep raising good questions and
Thank you.
gets me to think of something else then. I have two questions for you, John, and thank you so much for coming out tonight and presenting to the board and the residents. But with Sandy's question, and you're saying the monies would be in the capital budget, the CA board really asked CA to look at increasing the budget by $1 million because we felt it was too low. So that would give you some money to do the last part that you just talked about with Sandy, the culvert and that area. And I guess I'm not quite clear what you're saying about the county, and it sounds like in the newer villages, perhaps the county standards improved in terms of drainage and a runoff from roads, and in the older villages, they haven't come back and done anything about dealing with that issue, including, from what I think you said at the beginning, doing a partnership with CA so that if we're trying to do something to deal with the issue, they're not willing to even pay a percentage of that. Is that what you're saying?
We have done projects with the county that they've been interested in partnering with us on. Excuse me, where we have done you know, a 50-50 split. I guess the big one over at the corner of Dobbin Road and Oakland Mills Road.
Yeah.
Did a stream restoration project that we split the cost with them. That was,
But
Joe,
that's
say that.
industrial, that's industrial area
well,
employment.
yeah, it's industrial area, but they'll follow, they like that model. As if they are interested in the project. The issue with, say, Stevens Forest Pond is they like doing projects that generate credits that they can apply against their it's an MS4 permit, municipal separate storm sewer system that they are under a state permit to address some of the impervious surface. So when they do projects, they like generating credits, and these pond retrofits don't really generate that many credits. Now, I don't believe that this is an option, but if we were all in agreement that we would remove that pond and restore a stream bed through there, they could get credits out of that, and they would probably work with us on that. But I don't believe that's really that's a non-starter as far as I can tell.
Right, I think so
So,
too.
I
What about Long Look? I thought we were also talking about Long Look Lane. That also is the result of drainage from the
well,
road.
so let's talk about that for a minute.
Yeah,
My understanding of the county's approach to the storm drain system is they view it as a shared system. So where that pipe that comes off the street goes under private property, whether it's corporate, HOA, resident, and an easement shows, and there's a deed that dedicates the easement to the county, then the county will acknowledge that that's their storm drain. And if there's a storm drain that goes under private property or, corporate, it shows on an easement and there isn't a deed, they'll generally tell the resident, okay, you pay the first 5,000. We'll pay the rest to bring it up to current standards, and then we'll take the easement. And if the resident says no, then the county is going to tell them, well, then the pipe, that storm drain under your property is yours. So we've talked to them about this kind of stuff a few times, and we've been successful where we can find deeds dedicating easements, and where we haven't found deeds, you know, we've been told, hey, that's your pipe. So we've not done terribly well on these outfalls. Where we have been successful, the bioretention facility down at the end of Long Look, we were able to tie into a grant from the state, and we got reimbursed on the construction of that. This is coming up in a little short notice. We would have to, we'd actually have to figure out how to maybe modify a grant or apply for a new one to get something like what we're talking about here included in a state grant and maybe reimbursable by the state. That answer your question?
Yes, thank you.
John, what would the timeline be on this? Like, you know, when would you need some feedback from us about whether we thought this was the, you know, the best use of those funds we returned? And then, you know, if so, what would be the timeline to get, I'm assuming this would also have to be approved by a lot of different entities because we're dealing with waterways?
Well, so the entities, I mean, obviously, that's why I'm here asking you guys about it. And I really don't know what kind of horizon you have on your decision-making process. But, you know, should you be in agreement with it, I believe that there need to be some concurrence from the CA board. And it'd probably take, we have a contractor on call, probably take 4 months, 6 months to get something designed, which I would then come back and talk to you guys. And at that point, we'd be talking to residents who'd be living next to it. Depending on the size, if it's less than 5,000 square feet and it's less than 100 yards, and we are working in an ephemeral stream drainage way, and that would mean that it only runs after a rainfall, which this one fits. We would not need waterway construction permits. The 5,000 square feet and 100 yards of material moved. If we're less than that, then we don't need a grading permit. And then actually, once we have it designed, it's a question of lining up. We have a construction contractor on call who's actually very good at building these. So maybe a year.
Okay. And to answer your question about you know, the time we would need, I mean, generally what we do is unless it's some sort of emergency situation where, you know, time is really of the essence, we hear things in our new business and then we can take time to consider them, bring them back at the next meeting or at the next appropriate meeting for old business, and that's where we make decisions. We don't normally make decisions on the spot, and unless, you know, it were a circumstance where we agreed to waive that, like if you came in and said, you know, a dam is about to collapse, I need you to tell me right now because we need to start tomorrow. But you know, if you don't need a decision tonight, we would generally take more than tonight to make any kind of decision like this.
Well, I think that an emergency is not the condition here. I also think this warrants some conversation with the residents.
Yes.
And I think that not to make too big an issue of it, but that sycamore tree, it's a big tree. I think that that's going to warrant some trying to figure out how to work around it.
Okay. Warren and then Rebecca.
Hi, John. Thanks a lot for this presentation. I was just wondering how you came up with this as your project. Did you look at other projects and why did you pick this one?
Well, so I went back to the Watershed Management Plan. And it does talk about as a candidate project, bioretention, a long look. And we actually had this budgeted some years ago. We had both of them, the one down at the end of the Long Look at the cul-de-sac, and this one budgeted. And through the budget process, the funding was reduced to just covered one. So we'd gone down to the end to do that first. So this is, in my mind, this is just kind of a continuation and trying to complete something that we've been working on for a while.
Okay, thanks.
Thanks, John. Okay, and then Rebecca, I know you had a hand, and actually we've kept John for his hour, and I know we have Jessica waiting, expecting to go on at 8:35. So Rebecca, you want to bring us home with your question, and then we can, of course, follow up, via email with other questions for John via Sandy, and obviously have more discussion with this and make sure our residents are informed of the potential so that we get their feedback.
Yeah, I'll be really quick. Kind of on the back of what Warren just said, and I was going to say that, but is it possible? I guess I kind of feel like these funds are like our special reward for Sandy's good fiscal responsibility, really. But it's like a bonus project, right? That we get to pursue here in our village, environmental wise. And it kind of, I guess it would be really nice if we had other options to consider too. I mean, you're the expert in this, so what you say is the number one priority definitely holds a lot of weight, but it would be nice as residents if we could see, like, we have these potential, use of our allowance money, and these are the various things that it could get.
Well, I can certainly go back and see what else is in the plan. The only other projects that I have kind of on a wish list type thing from Oakland Mills residents that I recall are some stream bank stabilization projects, which our board has put on hold. It did this several years ago. Resident requested stream bank stabilization projects. I know there are several in Oakland Mills that we've talked about. So those I don't think would work. I like your if I was viewing it as capital money, I guess your reward. I'll have to go back to the management plan, and if you guys have anything that you have in mind, perhaps you could share, and I'll go look at it.
Okay,
Thank you.
well,
I'm sure we can think of something.
thank you very much, John. You spent the full hour with us and covered a lot of ground, so I appreciate all the time you took with us tonight. Thanks for joining us. Thanks for answering all the questions. Thanks for the overviews of all three of these projects or potential projects. And I have a feeling we'll be getting back to you with follow-up questions, suggestions, et cetera, because when you come talk to the Oakland Mills Village Board, you've basically opened Pandora's box when it comes to getting feedback.
Well, please send it to me. I'm open to it.
Okay.
We'll investigate it.
All right. Thanks very
Thank you.
much. Well, we're going to stay with the CA theme now, because next up we have Jessica Bellah, who's the CA manager for community development and real estate services. and she's going to give us an update on the e-scooter pilot. As you may recall, we sent a letter to CA saying, oh, hey, this pilot's happening, could you, maybe consider it running at the length of the multi-use path so it comes across the bridge to the east side of US 29 and over toward Blandair Park. So Jessica, welcome. Thank you for joining us. Sorry, we're starting you a couple of minutes late, but by Oakland Mills standards, this isn't really late. So I'm going to hand it over to you now before I make you any later.
No worries. I live in the night meeting world, so this is fine by me. Hi, everyone. Nice to see you guys, and thank you for accommodating me. So I was asked to come and kind of provide a brief overview of where things stand for the e-scooter sharing operations in Howard County, and then mostly just answer any questions you have. So I don't know if any of you remember back in 2019, before any of us knew what a COVID pandemic was, there was a commercial e-scooter sharing operation that was showing interest in starting up in Howard County. And a lot of businesses were asking the county if they could have this be set up in the area, and Howard County was interested in sort of establishing a policy and a process to manage that, because there's some people are very high supporters of it and some people have a lot of concerns about it. So you kind of want to manage the rollout of it now that we have like kind of more historical understanding of how these roll out in communities and what their benefits are and what their challenges are. And as part of that, CA spent a considerable amount of time, I think about 1.5 years, and I was sort of lead on the project for CA, of working with the county, working with the other business owners and landowners throughout Howard County, as well as the commercial e-scooter operations, to figure out what this would mean for CA, since so much of our pathway network is part of the transportation and recreation spine throughout Howard County. So anyone who is using these scooters is often going to be sort of crossing land ownerships constantly, both in the right of way to CA land to other landowners. So we had coordinated with them and spent time developing a license agreement, and our license agreement had sort of limited the pilot year area to the downtown Columbia area and the Gateway Business Park area, to kind of see how these rolled out and how they affected CA property at the time. Then we reached agreement on it right in the middle, so fall 2020, when we were in the middle of the COVID pandemic, and it wasn't the best time for a new scooter sharing operation to launch. So the company had gone through the process of finalizing a license agreement with us. They had gotten their permit from Howard County, and then they were sort of on hold. We're now at the point where their plan right now is to launch around March of 2022. So in the next few months, we'll start seeing the Spin scooter sharing company getting their vehicles out in the field. And they will do that under the existing license agreement that is signed with CA and the permit they hold with Howard County. So that is kind of an overview of where we started and where we are right now. Did you guys have any particular questions about this or want me to elaborate on any parts of that?
So I think the outstanding question from us is what are the chances that at least some distance on the multi-use path to the east of 29 could be considered. One of the things we always like to say here is if you go by Crowfly, the Oakland Mills Village Center is closer to downtown than some parts of what are called downtown are to downtown. If you kind of put downtown right there on Rouse Parkway, or through by the mall and everything. And of course, in our automobile centric culture, Oakland Mills seems far away, but actually when you consider something like Scooters or the Path, it is the Crowfly. It's straight across that bridge, and you are in what's traditionally called downtown. So I think that was the interest of our board when we were talking about this, and sent the note back to CA saying, hey, have you sort of given some consideration to us being included in what's currently being defined as downtown for this pilot, since we're right there on that same path?
Yeah, I can speak to that. So when this was originally discussed in 2019, 2020, The county came up with 3 general operating areas that they wanted to have the e-scooters commercial sharing sort of deploy in. And that was including downtown and then heading west, hooking up with a lot of the village centers to the west, as well as crossing US 29 and hooking up to the east with all the village centers there. When this policy change was brought to the CA board, some members were uncomfortable with that broad of a rollout of the program. So they had requested that staff write the license agreement such that we could limit it in the pilot year. I can say that the license agreement itself allows CA to change the area that they're allowed to operate within the CA pathway system at any time. So we're not locked into a specific geographic area of the policy program, of the policy in the pilot year, but the CA board, based on their adjustments to allowing commercial e-scooter operations throughout CA pathways, had shown discomfort with that level. So I think I can't quite answer what in terms of the policy changes or sort of CA board's approach to this, but I can say there's no restrictions within our agreement it's been for that to be expanded.
Okay, thanks. That's good information. Thank you. Ginny? And then Warren?
I'm sorry. Okay, first you should be congratulated on, I think you spent a lot of time trying to work out some of the concerns that people had about e-scooters, period, right?
It was a lengthy process.
Yeah, and so my congratulations to you. You did a really good job. Maybe you could share with the residents or the board some of the concerns in terms of that I can recall, parking areas where they're going to be able to pick up the scooters, collection, if scooters are just thrown someplace, what would that mean? One of the concerns I think expressed was, would CA have to go on there on the path system, pick up the scooter, and then bring it back to, to the garage and contact the company, et cetera, and have them pick it up. And this is an expense for CA, and yet you don't want to leave something on a pathway and have a problem where somebody could get injured. The other thing was speed in terms of whether that could be controlled or not. So there were several issues that were expressed that when the board voted, you weren't able to answer those because you were working on it. So that was the problem. You couldn't answer a lot of the questions because you were still people were still negotiating. The county council was trying to decide whether to put conditions as well on it. It had been a state bill originally that said scooters are the same as bicycles. The county bill would say scooters are the same as bicycles, so therefore they should have a right to the path system. But I don't know if the county ever then put some conditions on their pathways or not. But there were many issues that you had to work out, and you did work them out before the contract was signed. I don't know if you want to share some about some of these issues and how you dealt with it.
Yeah, I can address those issues you raise up. So, these are all part of the discussion that happened as we coordinated with the county and we're developing the license agreement. So just letting you know that the commercial e-scooter that are in the field operated by SPEN have a GPS locator on them. And that GPS locator allows the company to both set maximum speed limits and also geofence where the scooters can operate. So they can kind of send general limits and boundaries around where the scooters can operate, at what speed they can operate. And they can keep track of where their scooters are. So they, as part of their operations, they do sort of a daily roundup of all their scooters so that they can charge them and get them back in the field set up where they're most valuable, as well as, one of the benefits of this form of transportation is that it's very responsive to consumer use. So if you find through GPS tracking that you're having a lot of trips being generated in a particular area who are ending up in a particular area, you can start placing more of those scooters in that location for people to be using them. So you can be very responsive to how people actually need to use them in the field. And The county set a speed limit maximum of 15 miles an hour for the scooters. So throughout Howard County, they're limited at 15 miles an hour, which is pretty much industry standard. Some municipalities can go up to 20 miles per hour, but it's on very particular streets where you're not going to have a lot of pedestrian interaction with the commercial scooters. We had put in our license agreement the ability for us to require a slower speed. And that's because there are certain areas of the CA pathway network where we know that there's already some conflict between pedestrians and bicyclists that can occur. And so there are areas that just have a lot of interactions between different modes of travel. And so you might want to have a lower speed. But we wrote our license agreement so that it can be incredibly flexible to what's actually happening in the field. We have a lot of evidence because of how these have been operating in other communities of where the pitfalls are and what opportunities they also pose. And so we have a good idea of what we might be facing. And we just wanted to be able to write the license agreement so that we have control over that, including the spin users will be going on to the CA pathways to collect the scooters if they're left out and about and relocating them where they need to go. But they also have the ability to incentivize people parking it in the correct location. One thing to keep in mind is that the scooters are pretty beefy transportation devices. So, and they don't tend to start moving with their wheels unless you're paying for it. So someone who has not parked their vehicle in the correct location is paying to leave it unparked in the wrong location. So there's incentive structures within that to not park willy-nilly, but to park it where you're supposed to. The company is also out in the field collecting them. And then we, as part of our license agreement, wrote a special provision that if we note a scooter has been left nowhere near established parking station or where it needs to be, then just through our routine practices, we might collect it up and just take it. Since we have our guys out in the field constantly, we might collect it and then they can come get it from the warehouse. And that's not going to be a major imposition on our operations at all. So that's kind of, I think I've hit most of the points you raised, but let me know if I haven't or if you want me to elaborate on anything else.
No, as I said, my congratulations. It took a while for you and the county to work out all these safety and concerns, and I think you did a really good job on it.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you for the comprehensive answer. Warren, I think you had a question, and then unless there's something absolutely urgent, earth-shattering, we'll probably move on to try to keep on schedule and not keep Jessica here too late.
Hi, Jessica. Thanks for your presentation. It's good to see you again.
Good to see you, Warren. We've been in a lot of meetings together today.
Yes, we have. As we know, the other bit of nugget that Jessica and I learned today was that the bike share will probably end in June of this year. So Oakland Mills will probably lose their bike connection, their bike share connection to downtown. That's because the T-Mobile 3G network is they're going to stop using that, and that's what the bike share system uses. So I think this just pushes, I think it makes it more urgent that we actually have access to the scooters, because I think the e-scooters would help replace that that loss. And now this isn't definite, it's maybe extended, but it seems very likely that this will not, that we'll lose our bike shares. And I know, Jessica, this is not something that you can decide, but I mostly said this for the board, so the board would know.
So what, Warren, can I turn your statement into a question?
Sure.
How do, I don't know if Jessica, if this is a question for you, or Ginny, this is a question for you, but how do we follow through to get, you know, this stretch of the path we're talking about added, since it sounds like I guess the county hurdles and the contractual hurdles are not there anymore?
Well, I can say that per the license agreement, CA as the organization has the ability to alter the area. but that from a staff perspective, we wouldn't feel comfortable doing that within the pilot year based on the conversation that we had with the CA board, because they were pretty firm about wanting it to limit to the areas. So I think that this needs to be a conversation that at least includes the CA board of directors. I know that they are in receipt of the letter you took. I'm not sure what actions have been taken, because I don't think the board has met since that letter was sent in. So Jenny, I don't know if you have any insights onto the board process for letters from the villages.
Well, they're all considered, so we'd have to take this up and see if there's support. When is the year up? You're saying it would start in March, or is when the contract started?
So the license agreement was written to start, it actually, we finalized it in December 2020 with the ability for it to just continuously roll over every year. The official pilot year that was spelled out in the original license agreement would have ended this December 2021, but obviously we haven't actually had a pilot year since no program was actually launched. So we had just used the same terms that we had in our license agreement to sort of roll over the restrictions of the geographic area that was intended for the first year to encompass the launch starting in this March. But as I said, CA, if there is an interest in the CA board of directors based on village input to expand the pilot area, that is something that we are capable of doing. And then I would not be doing you a correct service if I didn't say that that is not something that I think would be beneficial to the communities, because this is a mode of transportation that would be effective in connecting our communities. So it is something that staff would be supportive of doing and matching the county boundaries for the rollout of their launch area.
Okay, so we need to talk about it more then. Okay.
Okay, thank you very much, Jessica. Okay, we're going to move on to I think this is the biggest new business agenda we've ever had, at least in my time here. We're going to move on to the final item in new business tonight, and that is OMCA elections 2022. And as we noted earlier, whatever happens with the bill we heard would actually become effective for the 2023 elections. So think of the 2022 elections in the context of what is, not what might be. And as we've done in the past, this is the kind of the introduction of the guidelines, the chairs in the committee under new business, and then we have the further discussion where we review everything for a couple of weeks, make any revisions, and ask any questions of Sandy and the election chairs when we bring it back as old business. So with all that said, just to kind of set the context for why we happen to be discussing this on the same night as we discussed the proposed bill, Sandy, do you want to take it over?
Just the timing. What we have to do in January is between now and the next meeting for everyone to look over the guidelines. And the biggest thing that was added was the option, and I'd like to shout out to Bob Roulette. Say hi, Bob, one of our co-chairs who's willing to do it again for the 50th year. So hi, Bob. So that the main thing in the guidelines that has changed is the online voting. So we had to add in the verbiage that allows for online voting. So when you read it, it's red line. Anything in red has been changed for this year, added or deleted, and anything in black text is what was there last year. The election calendar goes by dates set forth in our bylaws, following certain deadlines. There's a calendar if the race is race 1 or 2 or non-contested, and there's a calendar for contested race. And then there's the committee that we'd like to vote on by the end of January, so that our committee has been voted on and put in place. And those are, I think, the things that I sent you for this meeting. For the calendar, what we do is we do need everything discussed and voted on at the last meeting in January, because as you will see, on February 15th, the candidate packets are made available and they'll be online. We might have 1 or 2 at the most at the office. I don't even think anyone wanted a hard copy last year. So Amy will take the guidelines, the changes, put them all online. So it's really the biggest thing is that we vote by the end of January and that you take the next 2 weeks to read the guidelines over. You can reply all with your questions and I can answer them during the 2 weeks. And then we can pull it up on the screen at the next meeting, go through it one more time and hopefully vote on the guidelines and everything else I've sent you. So that is what we have for today. And the guidelines, as they are for this election, won't reflect what's going to happen, Jonathan, am I right, with any legislation at the state level that's passed, because we're not going to be able to do that between now and the end of January when we have to publish for this election.
Well, and well, the legislation wouldn't be effective during this
Right.
election cycle anyway.
So it's something to work on. So anyone have questions? Okay, so please do read it over because this guides our election. This is what our election chairs refer to, what our candidates refer to it. So it's really important. And there's not a lot of changes. So thank you.
All right, everyone. Sandy gave us homework. It's a 2-week long-term project.
Right. Thanks.
All right. Thank you, Sandy. Thank you, Bob. Is it going to be the Bobs or just a Bob this year?
Bob's.
Okay. We just have one Bob with us, but it's both Bobs. I was a little worried. Okay.
Yeah.
Well, it's good to see you,
Find out
Bob.
about the water.
I guess you get to be Bob 1 this year because you were here for the meeting. Ortola will have to be Bob 2 because he's not here tonight.
We'll work on it.
All right, board chair report. I actually have a little bit of a list of things, but I think I can work through them quickly because most of them are sort of quick items. Several of them pertain to the Village Center. Number 1 at the Village Center, the vacant soon to be 7-Eleven lot. If you haven't noticed, there are no more trucks, no more trailers, nothing on that lot. There are ropes across the entrances. And in addition to the no trespassing signs, there are large, you will be towed away and here's who you call to get your vehicle back signs. So that issue, until the digging starts and the redevelopment starts, seems to have been resolved. So that is very good news because I know everyone was tired of seeing the parking lot. So if you haven't been by there lately, stop by and see nothing because this is one of those situations where seeing nothing is actually a good thing. Staying at the Village Center, Sandy is continuing to communicate with Cedar regarding the eventual demolition of the Second Chance building. She's working with them on putting together a solid proposal that can then be presented to the board for the 3-week public comment period. As soon as they're able to get that together, we'll go ahead and schedule them, but that's what's going on with the Second Chance building. Staying in the Village Center area, you may have noticed that the Columbia Pharmacy has closed down, sort of. The owner of the Columbia Pharmacy bought the Caplet Pharmacy, which is on a mile south of Stevens Forest Road behind the Exxon station, the existing Exxon station, not the one that got demolished 20 years ago. So he closed the location on this end of Stevens Forest Road, and he moved his operations to the other end of Stevens Forest Road. So that's what's happening there. And you may have also noticed that there are for sale signs at the entrances to the professional center. I've received a couple of questions about that. Sandy did some research, talked to the Whalens. The professional center itself is not for sale. There's an office condo unit within the professional center that's for sale. So the Whalens are retaining the professional center, and they actually they have something else interested in the space that Columbia Pharmacy used to occupy. So if you're getting any questions about what's going on, at the corner of Stevens Forest and Santiago, is that whole property for sale? The pharmacy left. No, it's not for sale. Yes, the pharmacy did move to what's now called Caplet Pharmacy, and the building is staying with the Whalens. Last thing I have, or second to last thing I have is there's going to be a special meeting of the Board of Education with Dr. Rossman this week to address COVID. Obviously, there's a lot going on, all over the place when it comes to COVID and the Omicron variant, and there's a lot going on in the schools, Oakland Mills High came out of winter break, was declared no longer an outbreak school because lo and behold, they had no cases during winter break. Imagine how that could have happened. They did testing at Oakland Mills on January 6th. They tested 700 students, 79 tested positive. So they're going right back to where they were before. And it's not just Oakland Mills. For some reason, Oakland Mills is a school that's been very transparent with its numbers and everything. There are a lot of people on social media going, my school is showing 0 and I know like 15 kids. So again, no one has answered any questions about why the dashboard doesn't match what goes out in the emails. No one's really answered any questions about consistencies or lack thereof across schools. So, we sort of know what's going on here, and it's obviously not an ideal situation. And I think the Board of Education is hearing some of the new, noise and pushback, and they're meeting with the health department in a special session to figure out what next steps are. For our community, my concern remains that once all these kids test positive, they're out of school for at least 5 days. And, because the school system is not doing virtual, because the school system is not doing hybrid, they're basically relying on teachers going above and beyond and maybe recording lessons or bringing a camera into their classroom somehow and recording while they're teaching to stay engaged in school. Otherwise, they're home in isolation and they're just pulling stuff off of Canvas. And, that's probably not good for any student, but in a community like Oakland Mills, where, obviously we already have some challenges, I think it's just all the worse. And it's bound to set some kids who maybe are already behind even further behind. So just an update on what's happening there. Obviously, we didn't get a response from the school system, but I think enough people are saying things now that the Board of Education is having this special session this week. The only other thing, this isn't really a board chair report thing, it's more something for our board to consider. As I was saying to John, and as you all know, normally we hear things during new business. If we need to make a decision or take a position, we think about it for our 2 weeks. We come back under old business, we discuss and have our voter come to our decision. What we heard from Delegate Terrasa tonight, obviously is something we learned about. She came in on very short notice, which we appreciate. But if we wanted to take a position on this bill, the hearing is actually next Tuesday. And I don't think it would necessarily be great for any of us to try to take a position at 9:07 at night after we've been through 90 minutes of new business and still have things ahead of us. But we always do have the option, of course, of calling a special meeting to make a decision after we've had some time to think about it. So, I'd like all of you to think about that and then get back to me about whether you think that's something that's necessary or something we should do before the legislative hearing next week. And obviously, if enough of us want to do that we would be able to form a quorum. I'll work with Sandy on scheduling a special session just focused on that, for a relatively short amount of time. And of course, we'd have to put a public announcement out that we're having the meeting, and we'd schedule the meeting and have it. But obviously, we'd only have really less than a week to do it, because the legislative hearing is a week from today. So, we'd be down to about 6 days to do such a thing. So again, I'm not looking for a decision at this hour. I'm not trying to, push you in one direction or the other. I just want to make sure that it's clear that we can have a special meeting if we need to consider something like this where there's not enough time to follow our normal board schedule. Ginny?
Yeah, John, the hearing is the 25th, correct?
Oh, I thought is it the 25th or the 18th? For some reason, I had in my head that it is next week. Is it in 2 weeks? Well, even if it's the 25th, we
no,
wouldn't
you
meet again
still-
until after the hearing. Yeah,
I agree. You still have the same process.
yeah, we'd still have to do some kind of a special session, but maybe we have more time than I realized.
Actually, I love your approach. I think it's an extremely important bill, and the CA board will be hearing it on Thursday night. Some of us really pushed to get it on the agenda to work on. It may need some work, and it sounds like the flexibility is there, but you don't want to be talking about it now. So, okay.
Yeah. Well, but actually, Delegate Terrasa here, is it the 18th or 25th, the hearing? I don't know if she's still listening.
Yeah, I'm here. So my apologies. I think Ginny's right. I think it is the 25th. And your information was incorrect because I gave you incorrect information. It is actually the 25th. I'm so sorry. The wrong information came from me.
Well,
It
well,
is on the
thank you for,
it is on the 25th.
thank you for sharing that, but they are so used to me confusing, days and dates that probably still no one believes you and they think I just screwed up my calendar again.
No, it was
Okay,
definitely
so
me.
so we may have 13 days, not 6 days. So please, get back to Sandy and me, and if you could get back to us, I would say within the next 2 days, so that we can, have adequate time to find a time to meet and put out public notice with adequate time, and then we can schedule something if necessary. Okay, that's it for me, unless there are any questions. All right, on to Ginny.
See, John, I think it shows we're listening to you. That we knew
We're
the day
sleeping.
before.
There are no questions because you slept through it.
Not I. Okay, well, the one thing I already covered, we are going to be, we have amended the agenda to include House Bill 93, because some of us think it's really important that the CA board get a briefing on it. This is extremely important issue, at least some of us think so. Second thing that we have on, another thing we have on the agenda, I'm just gonna, I know it's late, so I'm gonna just cover two more things. Advisory committees, and you certainly are involved in a certain number of the advisory committees, but we're looking at the whole process of what is the purpose? Do they still serve a purpose? Some may not. Maybe we need other advisory committees. And what's the nominating process for an advisory committee, the confirmation process, number of members in their charter versus maybe the number they should have. Should they only be Columbia residents, or should we look at criteria for members and they could live in out parcels or perhaps in Howard County? That's true for the Climate Advisory Committee. Reporting date will be another issue. We want to make sure we move that up so that we get the reports, or some of us want to make sure we get the reports in a timely fashion with their charges so that they can begin the new year, which is May 1st, to begin whatever, whatever charges they think they need to do, or whatever actions for the year. Excuse me. The other thing is the budget. The budget will be coming out January 21st, so it'll be available to everybody to see what's in the budget. Certainly opening all the outdoor pools, it will be in the budget. The impact of minimum wage that was passed at the county level is being evaluated now. There was some initial evaluation. It could amount to about $500,000. Basically, the impact is more on, in CA staff, more on sports and fitness and, our facilities there than in other departments. But aquatics, it could be significant. And the question is, if we need more funding, there's only really 3 ways to do it. The annual charge, increase that. By a very close vote in December, the board voted not to do that on a 5-4 vote, so it was close. The other method would be to increase memberships and the classes that you're taking. The third way would be, which is my preference, strategically cut expenses. And I think that's the approach we should be using. As far as increasing the annual charge, I've consistently been opposed to that. Our people's assessments are going up. Some people have lost their jobs or they're earning less than they used to. Downtown is being developed, so you're going to get more funding from there. It's possible quite possible we will end this year with a surplus. So I just don't think, there's no way we should be increasing the annual charge. Absolutely no way. What else? I guess that's probably enough right now. The budget's going to be spending a lot of time in January getting feedback from residents and from the boards, and also in February before we vote. So there'll be ample opportunity to say what you think about the budget or what you don't think.
Ginny, I'm still waiting for the Generation X advisory group. You skipped us and went right to the millennials.
Yeah, and they're aging out. They're saying,
Yeah.
"Why we're not going to be in existence." So that's one of the groups that is there a need anymore, right?
I mean, honestly, all you get from us Gen Xers is, we don't care, but still, you should have at least thrown us a bone.
Yeah,
All
at
right,
least
thank you,
have
Ginny.
one meeting, at least have one meeting with you to hear. We don't care, okay.
Thank you, Ginny. Okay, Sandy, manager report.
Okay, I'll be quick. Sadly, I know you got the news that about Justin's passing and Reggie Smith, who was totally in Oakland Mills. I mean, heart and soul. Oakland Mills was his home. The other barn was his home. So it was really just really sad to lose those two wonderful guys. I did not attend the services. I stayed away for COVID reasons, but at Reggie's service, there were over 200 in attendance, and most of them were young youths from Baltimore City that he saw in stores and schoolyards, that he mentored, that he got involved in baseball and sports, that he got into college, and that they all, one after another, Charlotte said with tears in their eyes, thanked Reggie for saving their lives and giving their lives direction. So that's just more than anyone in their life could have impacted. So he was truly a wonderful guy, and we all knew about him, but until you heard the stories about him from the people he impacted, you would never have any idea what a life-changing person he was. So that's all very sad. We're being really careful in the office. There's just 3 of us in the back office in separate rooms at any one time. We're wearing the KN95 masks, limiting interaction with anyone that comes in and out. We had not had rentals on the schedule until starting in March, so we don't have any cancellations. We've had a few that are concerned later in the spring, but we're just being careful, and we're all comfortable being careful like that. But if anyone isn't, then they can work from home as well. But I think we're good. We all have our little UV fans on our desks and sanitizer. And other than that, I am looking to fill 2 facility weekend staff positions. Those are the people that work the parties, age over 21, has to pass a personal background check. It's always best to get recommendations from people that you know, hopefully people in the community. So if you hear of anyone that wants a nice part-time job, it's, a few weekends a month. We work out a good calendar so everyone gets a little bit of time, but it's not every weekend. Please send them my way. On election day, we're going to have a shred truck there. The plant sale won't be until May. It just works out better to have it when the weather's warmer. We're going to have an outdoor kids lively arts concert at the end of April, but until then, we'll probably be laying low on activities. Anyone have questions? Nope.
No, yep.
Okay.
Thank you, Sandy. Obviously, we talked about Justin before the holidays, but yeah, maybe not all of you knew Reggie because he left our employment a few years ago. I guess it's been a few years, right? It was definitely pre-COVID, but he was always a great guy to come into the other barn and talk to, and a great artist. I loved seeing his artwork.
Yep.
All right, committee reports. Lynn, any more architecture stuff?
No more, but I do want to thank everyone for paying such close attention to all of the material that went out beforehand about the appeal hearing tonight. These appeal hearings are never easy, and so I really appreciate the thought that you all gave to it.
Thank you, Lynn. Okay, well, that moves us to the bulletin board. And somehow we are back on schedule. So thank you. Thank you to everyone.
Yeah, we have 3 minutes to spare.
All right, so I'm going to start the bulletin board with our front office. So Amy, anything?
Nothing for me.
Okay. Sandy?
So I became a grandmother again on the 27th of December. Little guy was very little and very early. So we had a little rough time for the past 2 weeks, but now he's on his way to gaining weight and pretty good. So looking forward to a good future for him.
Congratulations.
His name's Dylan. Cute name.
I do have to register one concern. I haven't gotten any pictures since the first news.
You'll get some in about 10 minutes. I'll see.
Okay. Sounds good. All right, Ginny.
No, just thank you.
Okay, Jennifer.
None from me, but happy New
All
Year,
right.
everyone.
Happy New Year. Warren.
None for me.
Okay, Rena. All right, Rebecca.
Nothing.
Okay, Lynn.
No, nothing for me.
Bill.
No, thanks.
Well, then I'm going to say good night and end this thing 5 minutes early. It's 9:20. We said we would adjourn at 9:25, so we are adjourned. Thank you all very much.
Good way to start the year.
Let's go for a
Night,
pizza.
everybody.